Colorado, and we have created our very first indie horror game called Red. So Red is an atmospheric horror title. It's actually for PC and VR. We recently ported it over to Oculus VR. And it goes about the story of a young woman named Mercedes. Mercedes was involved in a horrible accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down. And every night she's pulled into a lucid nightmare that feels inescapable. And you play as her in that nightmare. Now your goal is to explore the environment and evade the dangerous enemies that lurk the corridors of the nightmare. You're not equipped with any weapons. You're actually equipped with only a flashlight, a lighter, and a radio. And these tools do different things. So the flashlight allows you to illuminate different objects and stun specific enemies. The lighter is just a plain lighter. It illuminates a smaller cone of light. And then the radio allows you to detect enemies when in the dark. And Red focuses on mental illness. It's been inspired by mental illness and a kind of to pay homage to all the people that have suffered mental illness. Mercedes is an individual that suffers from bipolar disorder and depression, and we really wanted to show that people who are struggling with these things, they're undergoing nightmares essentially every day, but there is hope and there is a way to escape these nightmares, and that is the true message of Red.
Okay, you already told a lot about the game before we started.
Sorry about that.
Why did you choose to name the character Mercedes?
So our initial concept to name Mercedes was developed by Nietzsche Washburn. He wanted to create a character, and this character was inspired by someone he met in college named Mare, and he decided to develop on that and name her Mercedes. This person had a lot of the similar characteristics to Mercedes, physically and emotionally, and so he talked to her about that, and he created the character Mercedes.
Okay, that's I don't know. It's weird for me to call people after cars.
Yeah. It was a very interesting choice by him. We weren't really sure why at first he named her Mercedes, but the name actually really grew on us, and it's more of names like that are more popular in the U.S. and the game is based in the U.S., so it actually fits a little bit better, but from people from other countries is definitely a very, very unique and unique name for sure.
Why did you choose to make a game like this?
So I think, as I said in the intro, Red is a horror game, and it is building off the idea that people that have mental illness are experiencing some really intense things on a daily basis, and they can be equated to, or they're similar to a horror film or a horror game. And we wanted to show that in a game format as respectfully as possible. Also, our intention was to mash the themes of mental illness with classic PS2 era horror games and 1990s horror films. And together, that was the passion project of Nietzsche. He wanted to combine horror with his favorite old school games and old school films to create a captivating and immersive game.
Did the game become what you originally planned it to become?
Could you say that one again? Sorry.
Did the game become what you originally planned it to become?
Oh, wow. The game has really changed throughout its development. It started out as a really, really in-depth investigative game where investigation took a lot of the development. So the original plan was to have 9 nights, and due to development times, we've cut it down to 3 to really create an immersive experience that's more focused, more detailed, and allows the player to explore the environment more. And it actually, probably our biggest pivot was we had a showcase at DreamHack, and we wanted to make a really crazy experience for the people that were coming to our booth. So we pitched the idea to port the game to VR, which was a great idea. And so the game went from just a PC horror game to a PC and Oculus VR game, and that was probably our biggest change. And we think that it's working really well. It's really fun to play in VR.
What inspired you to become an indie game developer?
So Boulder Games has been making games for a while now. We've made indie games for 8 years, and most of them have been mobile. It's ingrained in our company's culture, but I think the reason why we decided to become indie game developers was because it allows us to tell stories that we want to tell. It allows us to create characters that we want to explore and develop. And with Red, this was our first indie game, in my opinion. The other ones were for mobile, which were really fun to make, but this was our first hardcore indie game. And I think we wanted to just explore what it's like to develop a game. So to give a little bit of insight, Boulder Games also creates interactives for theme parks and for museums and for government agencies. We use our game technology to do that. And on the side, we create indie games. And I think it's a really fun way for us to take all of our knowledge of game development from these interactives and create something that's fun and really engaging. So these are our passion projects. These are the things that we love to do. And that's really why we became indie developers.
Or what platforms did you intend to release the game?
So we intend to release Red on Steam for PC with Oculus VR compatibility, but we've actually been talking with a lot of people, and everyone's been asking if we're going to port it over to PSVR, which we are definitely considering. If the game does well, then we will definitely consider porting the game over to PSVR.
Or Xbox people. What do you think is your best attitude in life?
Our best attitude in life? The best attitude in life, or?
Yeah.
I think positivity, but also positivity is really important, especially in regards to our game. Dealing with our game, it actually had some difficulties because we were dealing with really dark themes. So throughout the process, we had to reassure ourselves that this was the right route, and we had to be positive while making the game, because it was tough to talk about these themes for some of our developers because it was a very real thing. But so positivity is one of them, but also being real. And I think being real with each other and honest with each other if there is an idea that we didn't agree with or an idea that we thought we needed to be explored more was really important. Being real is, I think, real and honest is super important in game development.
How long have you been working on Red?
We've been working on Red for over a year now. We really started developing the game last February, and it's been a long project. Naichi, the creative director who did the art for the game, his concept is around 5-6 years ago when he created the idea in college.
That's a really old idea.
Yeah, it's been a long time in development.
What was the day-to-day process for making this game?
So the day-to-day process, wow, that's interesting. So the day-to-day process, first, it was very, very discombobulated. This was our first really big project for an indie game, so we were kind of trying to tackle everything at once. And at first we had a little success, and the progress was really slow until we got some help from our boss Ty, who sat us down and said, "Hey, we need to have a process, going about this." So now every day we have a checklist of different things we need to do in terms of map design, character development, and then once we started doing our bi-weekly meetings, our development and our process really started to pick up. So first it was create the story, then it was develop the map, and that was a day-to-day thing, and then now it's polish. But things varied from day to day, I'd say. But once we had our plan and our method nailed down, it was much easier to go about the process from day to day. We had a plan to do things every single day.
Would that be the same for potential future games you make?
I think we've learned a ton about game development this past couple of years. It's this project took a lot of effort, and we've changed the way we've gone about things. I think we, at the tail end right now, we've really nailed down how to work and how to develop an indie game in a better way. So I think we'll take a lot of the lessons that we've learned from this game about time management and process and put that into our future titles. There's a lot of things that we would change if we could go back, but now towards the end, we're quite happy and quite pleased with the way we progress things. And I think we'll use this as a lesson and a template for our future games.
What were your biggest inspiration for making the game?
Our biggest inspirations. So when Nietzsche and I went to DreamHack, we did a pitch competition where we talked about Red, we talked about the inspirations, and so some of the main inspirations from outside developers are the Resident Evil games were a huge inspiration. A lot of classic PS2 era games were an inspiration to Red's development. These games were games that we grew up playing. They were immersive. They had stories that really resonated with us, and they were terrifying. And they were games that scared us so much when we were little kids, and that's why we decided to go with that. And so we took inspiration from those games. We also took inspiration from some of our favorite 1990s and early 2000s horror films. There's so many that we took inspiration from, but we felt that the 90s and the 2000s had some not only captivating and terrifying, but really good stories that captivated the essence of Red, and we want to emulate that. So there's some awesome 1990s and early 2000s horror films that inspired us. And then as I said before, a lot of us have either gone through or had family members who had gone through some serious mental difficulties. So the other inspiration came from our own experiences with mental illness and the challenges of dealing with that on a day-to-day basis. And I think we took visual and horror inspiration from the games and from the movies, but the heart and the soul of Red has come from our own personal experiences.
Okay. What makes the game different from others?
So Red at first, we really were trying to figure out how to differentiate ourselves. I think that was one of the main things that me and Nietzsche and Chris were trying to do. So we've built it through Unity, which is a pretty standard game engine, but we were trying to think of how do we differentiate? How do we make this game unique? And around halfway through development, we decided to change the game to black and white, and this added a lot of intensity to the game. and the lack of color was represented well, and the only color in the game is well, of course, red. So that's something that definitely differentiates us from most games. There are a few others that are like that, but the other thing that we wanted to make unique was the daytime sequence. So in the daytime sequence, you will investigate a missing persons case, and this missing persons case is the process of investigating this is much different than the nightmare sequence. And so we wanted to have varying types of gameplay that both add an immersive experience. And so the daytime sequence is in color, and it reflects like the being lucid and awake, and then when you're in the nightmare sequence, it's in black and white. And so we wanted there to be a contrast between day and nightmare, and we think that has really differentiated that not only the gameplay but the visual style from day to night is very unique and is very different from a lot of games. It's not too jarring either, which we wanted to make. And lastly, there's not that many VR horror games out there, and so we felt that in order to create a niche, we wanted to change the gameplay. We wanted to create a unique visual style, and also just the experience of VR is very unique to many publishers, just because it's a new technology and it's super immersive. And I think that's how we differentiated ourselves. The gameplay is unique during the daytime, and the visual style is very unique, and the way you play it through VR is very immersive.
What do you think is the most interesting part of the game?
I think the most interesting part of the game is the visual style and the immersiveness. So when we play the game, we just feel like it encapsulates everything that we wanted in a horror game. We've added so many different things from various games and from our favorite films. I think that the best part of the game is the calls to mental illness and all the little details that symbolically represent mental illness. And it's a very impactful game. There's a lot of small little details that we tried to add to represent mental illness and the horror genre respectfully and properly. And I think it's something that is impactful, and it adds this sense of gravity and intensity that we haven't really felt in a lot of horror games. Red is not really meant to be a funny or a goofy game. There are some goofy elements, there are some silly jump scares, but the core of the game, the most impactful parts of the game, and the best parts of the game is the intensity and the detail that we put in the game.
You said that you're using Unity. Why did you decide to use Unity, and well, how did that work for you?
Unity is a really great engine. It's something that our developers are familiar with. We use Unity for all of our other work for interactives and other game design projects, and our developers are very good at using Unity and creating and using the assets from Unity to create a very impactful and visually immersive game. Our lead developer, Patrick, does all of the coding and the mechanical, the design to make objects move and make map design and things like that. And he's been working with Unity for a long time, for almost a decade. So I think that this game engine just it has everything that we need. It's simple to use, and I think most other developers would agree that it's one of the easiest and most intuitive game engines to use. And I think that's why we use Unity, just because it's kind of like a jack of all trades game engine. It's great at doing almost anything.
That was a good Unity commercial.
Yeah, he should pay me for that one.
What setbacks did you encounter during the project, and do you feel like you learned anything from them?
Oh man, there's quite a few setbacks. There's with any game development, there are things that will set you back, and if you don't learn from them, then your game's not going to get developed. So I think the most difficult one was when we first started development, we wanted to just tackle everything at once. We wanted to tackle the map design. We wanted to tackle the story. We wanted to tackle. We wanted to put every single small detail and every story element in the game as possible. And with a development team of only 3 people, it was challenging to do that. So we had to get rid of one of our project managers, sadly, because we were just focusing on everything, which is impossible to do. Can't really focus on everything, but we were trying to do that. And once we figured out how to just narrow down the things we need to do on a day-to-day basis, it was much easier. I think the most challenging thing, though, recently was developing for VR. So the initial port for VR from PC with the Unity engine is not difficult. It's quite easy, actually, if you have the developer kit, obviously, for Oculus. However, creating a VR experience that's good is challenging. So some of the things that we've been challenged with are head orientation. So keeping your head level and not moving around randomly is one of our most challenging things. And then the ever-present issue in all VR games is nausea. They don't really know. No developers have really figured out how to prevent nausea, right? One of the ways that they have tried to is bumping the frame rate up, and that has had some success in preventing nausea, but not entirely. The other ways that they have tried to prevent nausea are by having a point and click, where you point and click to the area that you want to travel to as opposed to walking. But we felt like that would take away from the experience. So what we had to do was make head tracking and the head orientation really good, seamless, and not jarring. We also had to fix up our map so that the frame rate would stay high for most people, so that people wouldn't get nauseous. And that helped us a lot. And it took a lot of time, but we ended up with a really good VR experience, and this also helped the development of our normal PC experience as well. So that took the most time and probably was the most challenging, just because our developers, this is our first time really diving deep into virtual reality. So that was a huge hurdle to overcome, but I think that we overcame it, and it just took a lot of research, and thankfully there's a lot of awesome Oculus developers. If anyone is trying to develop Oculus, go on their website. There's a lot of really friendly people on the subreddit, the Oculus subreddit, and on their website that are willing to help you. These people are really experienced with VR and the challenges that come with VR. So if you're trying to develop, don't be afraid to reach out to those people. That's my main advice. Don't be afraid to contact people, because the gaming community it's massive, but it's also a tight-knit community, and there's developers that understand that people are facing these challenges and they need help. So I think the main thing that I learned from this with the VR aspect is don't be afraid to reach out to these people, and know that there are people that would love to help you.
If you could go back in time, would you do anything different?
If we could go back in time, would I do anything different? Honestly, the only thing that I think we would go back in time and change is changing our focus and being realistic. I think that's a challenge of many indie developers. They want to create the perfect game and they want to have their game have every single thing that they planned in having it. But once you come down to development, you start to realize you have to start taking away things. And
yeah, it's like when developers when they start, they have the next World of Warcraft in their head, and when the development is finished, they have like a 1 hour game.
Exactly, and I think it's important for indie developers to realize that not everything that you want to be in your game is going to be in your game. But if you take away certain things that you want to be in your game, you'll have more time to develop the best parts of your game. And I think that's really important, and I think that's something that every indie developer should be real about when they're having their weekly meetings with their team. Everyone's going to be bringing up different ideas on things to expand upon, different lore aspects that they want to put in their game, different details that are probably awesome but might not be essential to the game itself. And what we did was we took a long time to get to that realization, and I wish that we could go back and cut out some of the development time, because we did waste a lot of time focusing on things that might not have been that weren't really essential in the long run. And if I could go back and change that, I think that we would have had more time to create an even better game. And we're really happy with where Red is right now, but I think if we could go back and be realistic about our capabilities and the things that we wanted to do, we would have had more time to add upon the really, really awesome aspects of the game. But that's only something you can really learn through trial and error, and that's why developing games is so challenging. But yeah, that's what I would have changed, just cutting out some of the fluff in the beginning.
Okay. If you can advise any other indie game developer for any game, what would you tell him?
Utilize all your resources. There are so many people willing to help you throughout the process of developing your game. So there's a couple things I would advise. So I think the first thing that you need to do is make friends with people, your local game developers, because these are the people that you'll go to for feedback. These are the people that you'll go to for advice, and it's really important to make those connections. So that's the first thing. The second thing is something that I said is anything that I regret that I would have changed is being realistic. So I would definitely be realistic with your expectations of your game. The other thing is you need to market your game. You need to get out there and interact with your community. You need to use as many social resources as you can. And the thing is that it kind of sucks sometimes. It's a lot of extra work that doesn't feel like it's going to pay off, but you need to start that at the beginning of your game development. And what a lot of developers don't realize is that a lot of developers are like artists. They're very talented. They create some awesome stuff, but they're afraid to show the development of that stuff because they feel that unfinished work it looks bad, or people can't appreciate it. But the thing is that people love to watch the development of your game. People love to see the nitty-gritty glitches and stupid things that you're going throughout the process of developing your game. So don't be afraid to post that stuff on social media or on Reddit. Don't be afraid to do that. And that's something that I fortunately have been there for our developers, because sometimes it's hard for them to understand that the skeleton of the map is something that people would love to see. So I would say start your marketing as soon as you can, and don't be afraid to show your progress, because that's what people want to see.
You are the first guy that actually says that marketing is important. This
Well,
is
that's
why most indie games fail, because they don't do marketing.
I know, exactly. It's so important.
Yeah, I also don't get why people forget it.
It's such an important part, and that's one of the reasons why is because I do the majority of the marketing for the game. So I've had to do a lot of research on its importance. But you're right. It escapes the minds of a lot of developers, and that's a shame because there's so many awesome developers. I see people with some of the coolest games I've ever seen, but no one's gonna ever play them because they didn't put the work in to market their game, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, if you have a cool product and no one knows about it, no one is gonna get it.
Exactly.
And if you have a bad product but it's promoted well, people are gonna buy it and then say they don't like it because it was a bad game.
A mediocre game with great marketing will do so much better than a great game with no marketing.
Yep. But yeah, that's a big indie game problem.
Yeah, it's getting better, I'd say, because communities are getting a little bit larger, and developers are starting to realize that it's important. And I think one of the tough challenges is that I don't want to stereotype developers, but many of them are quite shy, and that's something that I've kind of learned. They're quite shy. A lot of them are outgoing, but the outgoing ones, their games do so well because they market their game well. And I don't necessarily think that you need to be outgoing in order to, do well, but you need to have a little bit of a presence in your community and in the game world in order to make your game shine.
Yeah, it's a thing of like, when you don't do it yourself, at least hire someone to do it for you.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do that for relatively cheap. There's people out there. There's Instagram gurus that will be able to do it for really cheap. So, I definitely suggest that. Have you had any? How have you come to that realization that marketing is important?
I'm a marketing guy.
Oh, of course. I guess you are. I mean, you have your indie game, indie plays. Playing
so
indies.
It's my job to help developers with their marketing.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you got 74 games now. I can guarantee that all of these developers are very grateful for you to be there.
Well, the PlayingIndies website is completely free, and the server is as well. So when I post a game on the website, the developer doesn't have to pay for it, and the post gets promoted for free.
Mm-hmm.
But it only gets tweeted out a few times, and that's it. And the text is mostly provided by the developers themselves. So it will not go really high in Google or anything.
Yeah.
So it's not like a million people see it. But
yeah, everything counts, and so I think that's valuable.
When you have like 20 of these websites, it will result in sales. But on my website, well, I think you should be happy if you get five sales from the post.
Oh, I completely, that's, anything helps. And
interviews all obviously get more because they get more views and easier to promote. But just the posts, they do get read, and the website does get visits.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like, I don't think it really pulls sales for a developer. It might help, but it's also not intended to do that. It's more intended to get more developers to one spot. That's the Discord server that goes with the website.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's easier for me to do my job, to get people to sign the contract and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's a project, and I think most developers are happy to be part of any indie game community. So it's just nice to have be able to talk about your game too. And there's so many games, so many indie developers that want to be able to tell their story. So any person that's willing to make that community stronger, I think is a great cause.
Yeah, well, with the PlayingIndies website, I really went like I need to put as many people in one spot as possible, but they all need to be focused on just making games and showing the game. Because for all other stuff, I have another server and you can go there to do that.
Yeah.
So there's only one room to chat in, and it's just meant to post updates about your game, show it to the other developers in the server, and show it to me. So when your website is on my website, and your stuff is on my website, and you have an update, I can add it. That's basically it. That's why I made that Discord server.
Oh, cool. That's exciting.
So it's basically an update station, but people don't seem to understand it, and they are chatting about pretty much everything. In one room, they even came to me for other rooms within the server to talk about casual things. While in the information room, there is a section that tells you have to go to the other server to do that.
Discord is chaotic. I feel like Discord is super chaotic, but at the same time, it's pretty sick that people are interacting in your Discord. So, holy crap, 155 messages since 4. Yeah, your Discord's actually popping off pretty good. So.
Yeah, I think about 50 people joined since this weekend.
That's awesome. I'll try to I'll let some other game developers know about it.
Nice. See, free promotion for me. I don't need to be a marketing guy. Other people can do it for me.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing about marketing is if you're honest and you're cool and you make friends with other developers, everyone's willing to lend a hand. It's a small community. It's a hard community to stay in. So I think it's important for people to be, there
on Twitter, it's like you make a sort of game to promote each other. Uh-huh. So sometimes you retweet cool-looking games in the hopes that they will retweet your own game, and weirdly enough, it works.
Yeah, it totally does. Totally does.
But yeah, let's go to the next question because, this way we will take a lot of time now.
Cool.
What do you feel is success for an indie game developer?
Success for an indie game developer. I think it varies from studio to studio. Success definitely varies because for some studios, they need to make a return on their investment for their game. So for them, sales is super important. But for others, the success might be more intrinsic, might be more abstract. So for us, we want to sell as many titles as possible, and that's why we're putting effort into marketing. But I think we've learned so much from development. I think this will help us with other aspects of older games, other business stuff, and the process for our future titles is really important to us as well. So just learning about how to develop a good game is for us is success. Now, we also want to create a cult following, and I think that's the main goal of all indie developers, is to create that really tight-knit community of people that love your game. And I think that's something that everyone should strive for. I think that is the ultimate success story for a game. And that, in my mind, is probably the greatest demonstration of success. It might not be amazing sales. It might not be all over IGN, or you might not be getting interviews by big game review companies. But if you get that community that really appreciates your game and loves your game, to me, that's a huge success. And if you learn something along the way about how to develop and to improve your future titles, that's also a huge marker of success.
And the marketing gets easier per game because you already have the community to share it to.
Exactly. And you build upon that.
Yeah.
Precisely.
That's how gaming marketing works. It's pretty easy in concept.
It's definitely easy in concept. You just gotta put out some quality games and build that community, build those friendships.
To make other developers learn anything, what resources would you recommend?
So, throughout this process, I've done a lot of the research and a lot of the outreach, and for me, I think the greatest resources that you can use are social media. You can learn a lot from different developers, get ideas for how to make your game good. Also, subreddits are absolutely amazing for tips and tricks. There are developers on there 24/7 willing to give you help. Let me pull up a couple. There's some absolutely great ones that I would suggest that people go to. You got Indie Games, r/Indie Games. You have GameDev Screens. Game Jolt's a really awesome website where you can put your games on there. That's another thing that I would suggest. There's websites that want indie devs, like Bright Locker and Game Jolt are all dedicated to promoting and sharing your game. It's not hard to sign up, and that's just another place that you can go to sell your game other than Steam. And that's awesome. So I would definitely do that. There's Game PR, there's Gamer News. My suggestion is do a lot of research into different subreddits, different indie game websites that are willing to share your game. And also find your local game dev Slack, because I'm in a Colorado game dev Slack right now. That's a great community, and it provides you with weekly and monthly meetups where you can make friends and share your game. There's a bunch of game jams that you can do, and it's a really fun way to make friends and integrate yourself in the community. My other resource that I would say is find your game's niche. So if your game is a retro 80s game, follow a bunch of different people on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook that do retro 80s indie games. Learn from them. Find those subreddits that are dedicated and post your work on there as frequently as possible. Those are the resources that I think are really essential to marketing your game. And then in terms of game development, try to use different resources like even like LinkedIn or our Oculus website or whatever websites that you think will be good, and reach out to those developers. Those people will help you for sure. So those are my resources that I would use.
Okay. What do you think about the current marketing strategies in the indie games industry?
Current marketing strategies. The thing with marketing an indie game is that there's a lot of, it's very saturated, is what I'm trying to say. The gaming industry is very saturated. So, the current ways are obviously social media and game jams and stuff like that. But I think that in order to really differentiate yourself, you need to find a strategy that works for your game, and you need to capitalize on that. I think that the current strategies are good. I think that they're good, and I think that the communities that you can get involved in are good. But in order to really differentiate yourself, you need to create a campaign that's unique, and that's going to be different for everyone. But I think that the current strategies are pretty decent. You just need to put the time and effort into spending that time to use those strategies properly.
Where do you see the indie game market going in a few years?
So I'm from Colorado, and we're a big fan of microbreweries. Microbreweries are a lot like the indie game industry. They're small, but they're beloved, and people love going back to them over and over, and it's growing. So just like the microbrewery industry in Colorado, the indie game industry is definitely growing. People are learning to appreciate these companies, especially from the backlash of all these corporate AAA studio giants that, they create some awesome games, but some of their customer practices haven't been the best. So I think that indie games is a growing industry, and as these indie game developers get larger followings and as they get more resources, their community practices and the way they go about game developments are going to slowly bleed into the larger industry. I think that they're going to have a positive effect on the gaming industry. So I think that this is a great time to get involved in indie gaming. There's a lot of games out there, but I think that the indie game industry as a whole is going to have a positive impact and is going to continue to grow. And only time will tell, but I think that's where it's headed.
Have you ever worked for other gaming companies?
I have not worked for another gaming company. This is actually my first job out of college, during and out of college. So this is my first experience for a gaming studio. It's been really fun, but I'm really excited to see where the future goes. I love it here right now, but I can't wait to see where things go, and I love the gaming community. So we'll see what happens. But this studio has been so much fun, and being able to watch the game and participate in game development is truly special.
Did you do gaming education in school, or did you do something else in school?
Did I do gaming education, or like learn how to game develop in school?
Yeah.
No. I actually am a evolutionary biology major. So this industry is completely foreign to my educational experience. I completely went left field with it, but I remember I was sitting in my horrible chemistry class and thinking, I don't really want to do this. I love animal biology, but I love gaming more. And so I made that first step and came to Boulder Games and said, hey, I'll do anything to work here. I'll be an unpaid intern until I prove my worth. And that's what I did. So I went from an evolutionary biology major to an unpaid intern at an indie game studio. And gradually I made my way through the ranks, and now I'm full-time here. So no, I don't have any educational experience with game development.
Why did you even finish the education?
Well, the interesting thing is that I loved learning about evolutionary biology, but I didn't really feel like I wanted to go into the field. So I was already super far down the road when I made this transition. I was already a junior in college, so it would have taken me years more to change my major and to pivot. So I stuck with it, and now I'm trying to use my experience, my knowledge with biology to potentially create games and interactives that promote the education of conservation and other things that relate to biology. So I'm trying to use my biology experience with game development to make a positive impact on conservation. That's one of my goals in the next year.
What were your childhood interests?
My childhood interests were, I loved video games. I played sports, and I love sports, but video games were something that have always been a part of my life. So that was one of my interests. I also love the outdoors, so that's probably one of the reasons why I went to evolutionary biology. But I'd say video games were probably my biggest hobby growing up, and that's most definitely why I'm here today.
Okay, that was the last question.
Awesome.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, sure. I'll say a few things. Whenever you're ready.
Now.
Cool. Yeah, first thing, I'd just like to thank you, Eddie, for having me on your interview. It was really awesome speaking with you. Red is going to be released in October on Steam. It is going to be compatible with PC and Oculus VR. We're currently having a demo available right now. So we would appreciate any and all feedback, because that is how we're going to make the game awesome come release. We're going to be doing a giveaway as well with a mask. So we're having this mask creator create this custom red mask, which is going to look sick, and we cannot wait to give that to some people. So we're going to be doing a giveaway for that. So be sure to stay tuned. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Boulder Games. We also have our own subreddit, which is currently pretty inactive, but feel free to follow us on there. And yeah, we're doing custom artwork. We're getting custom artwork from other developers and other artists. So that's something fun that we're doing. We're always trying to get our community involved, and that's pretty much it. I really appreciate you having me on, and yeah, that's Red.